Welcome to 5 Good Minutes.
You're listening to today's inspirational message on the book of Esther with Jenna Bajuszik.
I am so excited to dive into the book of Esther with you this week. We're going to be looking at the first chapter. My name is Jenna, and I love this book. It is so full of drama and intrigue, and even though in the book of Esther, the name of God is not mentioned, his fingerprints are all through it, and there's so much that we can learn about who he is and his character and what he's like even through this story. Now, I'm going to give you some historical context for this story because it helps us understand what is going on and why these things are happening. So it's told in the time of Xerxes. King Xerxes was king of Persia between 486 and 465 BCE. Real guy, you can look him up in history books. He really focused on conquering a ton of new lands and expanding his kingdom. He really sought power and prestige in a way that we still remember him all these thousands of years later. Now, Xerxes was ruler of Persia in a time when, after the Israelites had been living in exile, some of them had begun to return to rebuild Jerusalem. Now, not every single Jew returned to rebuild Jerusalem. Now, those stories, you can look at Ezra, you can look at Nehemiah, those kind of tell the stories of the rebuilding, but not every Jewish person returned. Some stayed where they were within the kingdom of what was now, in this part of the story, Persia. They had lives, they had businesses, they had families, and going on this new adventure of uprooting and rebuilding and restarting wasn't something that every single person was interested in doing. So this story that we read in the book of Esther is told from the perspective of those Jews that were still there. We don't know who wrote the book of Esther. The identity is a mystery for the ages. But it does tell this really beautiful, true story that starts out with a king being incredibly selfish, which, if you look over history, is not a new story. But as we look in the book of Esther, chapter 1, it's Xerxes' third year reigning, and his royal throne is in the citadel, the fortress of Susa, the city. And in the third year of his reign, it says in Esther chapter 1, verse 3, he gave a banquet for all of his nobles, his officials, military leaders of Persia and Media. The princes, the nobles of the provinces were also present. So basically what happened, for a full 180 days, he, and I quote, displayed the vast wealth of his kingdom and the splendor and glory of his majesty. It says in verse 5 that when these days were over, the king gave a 7-day banquet in the enclosed garden of the king's palace for all of the people, from the least to the greatest, who were in the citadel of Susa. Now you might think, wow, this guy's super nice. He's inviting everybody. He's inviting the lowly workers. He's inviting the middle class. He's inviting everybody. What a generous guy. Because it was a very generous and lavish party. There was no cap on food. There was no cap on drinks. It was everything you wanted, over in abundance. But here's the thing. Xerxes was not doing this out of the goodness of his heart because he loved his people and wanted to throw them a party. No. King Xerxes very much was intended for this party to be a display of his power and of his influence. It's all he wanted. The decorations are described in the book of Esther chapter 1, and not because so we can better visualize, but to really tell the story of the extravagance that he poured into this. What his goal was for this entire thing was to prove to every single person, from least to the greatest, military leaders, the princes, anybody that was under him and could therefore perhaps depose him, was to prove how powerful and how rich and how influential he was, and that was his goal. We're going to continue to dig into how this turned out for King Xerxes in the next couple of days, so stay tuned.
Thanks for joining us here today. There's a lot of great content to explore on Orchard Hill Plus and on the Orchard Hill main feed from the weekend. Have a great day.